Hey guys, so I finally finished this portrait painting. This is the longest painting I've ever done, and I probably clocked in at about 100 hours into this one. When I first started working on this one, my original intent was to just paint the whole face and make some modifications here and there, but then I thought that it would look like too much like many other portraits and not stand out as much as I'd like it to. I decided to add some abstract elements to the left side, and I would say that this side took longer than the right. You see, painting the right side that has the face, I knew what I was working with. I simply followed a formula and painted what the reference photo provided. However, when I started working on the left side and tried to get the abstract elements going, I didn't realize how difficult it would be. If you can't tell already, I tried to create a combination of objects here that look like a face. Painting the objects themselves wasn't nearly as difficult as it was to figure out what to paint in the first place. That's what you have to consider when you're painting something abstract. Paying attention to detail and making sure that everything is painted with precision was my priority. This is the type of painting where I have to focus on craftsmanship and make sure everything looks neat and polished. I also used a limited color palette. I used mainly brown, a small amount of purple, and a very small amount of red, and varying ranges of white. I used green in a few spots for some highlights, but I wanted to have a unified color scheme in this painting. There's a ratio of colors that is supposed to have a certain percentage of the dominant color, which is about 60 to 70% of the total colors of the painting, about 20 to 30% for the accents, and about 5 to 10% for the highlights. Movies actually use a similar color ratio to create a specific mood or make a statement. But besides all this, the hardest part about this painting was how time-consuming it was. I had to spend so much time pretty much doing the same things over and over again, especially with skin textures. Painting skin textures becomes easier when the size of the portrait gets bigger, and of course it's easier to blend with larger brushes. That's why if you do want to go for more realism in your painting, your best bet is using a larger canvas. Using a photograph with high resolution is a must if you are new to doing this. Zooming in on the photograph and getting an understanding of the light patterns on the skin will help you not only paint the photo better, but will give you a better general understanding of how painting skin textures works. When you zoom in on this photo, you can see the diverse array of color we have here, as well as varying values. Pay attention to where the light is coming from. The best portraits are the ones where the lighting is dynamic, where you can see the shadows and plenty of contrast that captures the various contours of the face. Even though we are painting a skin tone, you still need to think in terms of 3D. We need to be thinking about the way light and dark work together with all these bumps, dimples, and wrinkles. Painting skin textures can be very similar to painting a rocky surface. It's practically the same thing but on a different scale. You have varying ways the skin textures have peaks and valleys, and so you as a painter need to understand how light is going to interact with this. The light is coming from above and in front of the face. And so as we are painting these light clusters of paint, we are going to be indicating that. So the area I want to focus on today is this small area here by the side of the mouth. I already have a basic flesh tone on here, and so now what I want to do is add a couple more slight deviations of this color on here. Adding color variations when you paint textures of all sorts helps make a difference and really fleshes out the area. The paints that I'm using are golden acrylic paints. These are very great paints, and I highly recommend them. I am mixing brown with some purple and white for the base color, and if I want to deviate a small amount, I add slightly more purple, which desaturates the brown, and I add a very small amount of red if I want to warm up the mixture. When you apply the paint, make sure that the color value is still relatively similar to the rest of the flesh tones, so that we can make way for the next layers of paint. Some of these spots I want to very gently blend together with the adjacent colors. Keep some of these color transitions smooth, but also allow some patches of color to stand out. Once I cover up the area here, let's add some darker values here in the bottom and create a transition. At this point, you should be able to tell that the light is coming from above. Also, keep in mind, don't paint too many large solid colors here. Remember, we are painting textures here, so keep the brushing short and small so that we could get these small patches of paint in this area. Keep in mind, when you are painting these patches of colors and shadows, keep the brushing small because these skin textures involve many small parts where changes in light and color occur very frequently. Once I get that done, I start to slowly add lighter parts to the area. When you start adding these parts, remember that you will be painting more on top of this part. What we are doing is stacking up layers of color on top of each other, where some parts will be slightly lighter or darker than other ones. I think the part that people have trouble with the most is painting the variety of value. Not all of these shadows are going to be equal in size and contrast. Some are going to be lighter than others, and some will have more size. Some of the valleys here are going to have their own small hills inside. So I think that it helps to change your mindset when you're painting something as complex as this. Like I said earlier in the video, thinking in terms of 3D and imagining that you're painting a rocky surface helps deal with the overwhelming nature of this type of subject. You also are probably aware that not all skin textures are the same here in this particular painting. Another thing to remember is that with acrylic paint, your mixing is going to be different than if you're using oils. Since the paints dry much faster, we're going to be using dry brushing a lot. However, this becomes much more difficult when you're painting the smallest details. When you're painting at such a small scale, we'll be using what I call color approximation. I use a series of color values and paint them alongside each other, so that when you look at the painting from a distance, the colors seem to blend together because they are close to each other. Making paintings like this can take quite a while and can seem overwhelming when you look at the picture as a whole. Breaking down the process and thinking in terms of the analogies I mentioned earlier helps a great deal with taking one step at a time when you're working on this. Notice how I go back to the dark values again and add the valleys right next to where the light is. Be careful when you do this part because it's easy to overdo it. You can really start to see the textures come to life at this point. Also, don't stick with the same value the whole time. Change up the degree of shadow in some of the areas. Check out my other tutorials and notice how painting other subjects is vastly different from painting this one, even though we're using the exact same paints. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. I'll see you in the next one.